welcome back, you beautiful people. We've still got 3 more series left to go, but before we go to the last 2 and bring DJ Wheat on board, we do have one more, which is going to be cha1n versus psygib. And me and Flea, we're having a little bit of banter before we actually jumped on here, and we we're just discussing, like, just looking at the leaderboard and stuff. Both cha1n and psygib are currently going 1-7 in series score, but they've also both going 5-19 in map score as well. It's literally picture perfect, identical scorelines at the moment. Of course, they're both hovering around joint 13th so far, so a win for either one of these players is going to be hugely beneficial for them.
It absolutely is, both just in terms of their placement on the scoreboard, but also, you know, towards the end of the season, if it's going to really come down to it, and we might have, you know, some sort of elimination or seeding going into the actual finals, that one win over your, so to say, rival in terms of points, because that's really what they've been, really closely mirroring one another so far, that could prove to be instrumental.
And you can see from the world rankings so far, this isn't, so to speak, before the matches. This is actually updated and what's been carried over from the previous matches here today as well, just to let everyone know at home. So they actually are both joint 15th, so it's a battle of just trying to get out of there, and I think both of them should be able to get above cha1n anyway, no matter what happens, even if one of them loses 0-3. But again, this is going to be massively important for them, because obviously much lower seed you're going to be on day 1 at QuakeCon, you're going to play some tough opponents from the challenges side, and we've already seen some very tough opponents coming out from the qualifiers already. But let's start off with cha1n. We know that he's the kind of guy where somehow every year, every finals is able just to really bring the competition, and that gap he has for 4 to 6 weeks leading up to some of these finals, he's just like an entirely different person, is it? So I kind of feel like with these results, you can just scrap them when you go to the Quake World Championships anyway. But just have a look at the results so far. He's taken a map of some of the top dogs, such as Zeneku, Maxter, Kilson as well. Has only defeated Tox so far, and had a few struggles against Avik, Rafa, Wenger and Racy along the way here. So I have to see what he can do. I still think, even though they're par for par in terms of the match win rate and the map win rate as well, but I think people, or a lot of people, may actually side more with cha1n, depending on if Corrupted Keep has been banned, because this guy has been a bit of a menace on Corrupted Keep as well.
He absolutely has. Now, his opponent is no slouch either. As you mentioned yourself, they are tied perfectly in terms of match and map wins so far. Both have managed to secure 1 win, 7 losses. psygib's win has been against Zip. cha1n's, we saw earlier, was against Tox 2 weeks ago. Now, most recently, psygib played Nasva cha1n, suffered a 1-2 loss against those two as well. Now today, yeah, cha1n is going to be a major opponent for him, because something that I do think we should briefly talk about, Lethal, is, I don't know if you saw cha1n's most recent tweet, but after losing to Rafa last week, cha1n took to Twitter and he said that was the last loss of the season, period. That was it. Just no context, nothing more. He didn't follow it up. He just said, this was my last loss of the season. From now on out, it's full focus, it's dedication, it's getting ready for QuakeCon, and he's going to revert what has happened, right? Because at one point, he was the only person without a win within the Quake Pro League this season, at least. And that's something that you wouldn't expect from someone as talented and as skilled as cha1n.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise, really. We know that at some stage, obviously, everyone's got a lot going on in their lives in terms of like work, etc., their personal life, so it's very hard to train at times. And cha1n probably feels like now he's got a bit of time to now be able to grind and be able to practice thoroughly enough to now make these strides forward, getting ready for the Quake World Championships as well. And this is, like I said before, of course, the lower seed you have on the leaderboard, the tougher opponents you can have in challenges, and we've seen some very tough people come out from challenges so far. And just to let people know as well, we do have the APAC qualifier coming up next week, so I think the sign-ups are on May 1st. I'm not 100% confirmed on that, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled on that for anyone in these APAC regions to get yourselves involved and to qualify for the Quake World Championships as well. But let's go to the picks and bans here, Flea. Let's see exactly how things are going to occur. Let's see if Corrupted Keep's going to come up this time. No, it's not. It's not going to come up this time around. It looks like it has been banned. And do you know what? It's been quite funny, Flea. There's Corrupted Keep has not been banned by a lot of people. It's been a little bit of a surprise, but it's quite different really, isn't it? Most people would rather ban their own pick rather than ban someone else's best map, which is understandable. It depends how comfortable you are going into the series. And it looks like we can have Deep Embrace, Ruins, and Veil. And it looks like we can have the usual Ranger and Strog matchup, not on Corrupted Keep or Awoken this time round. It will be on Deep Embrace. Slash versus the Anarchy on Ruins. And then to finish things off, we've got the Galena ban and the Eisen versus BJ picks.
Pretty standard picks, I feel like. Deep Embrace, you know, Ranger, works well against anything. Strog, it's got a lot of speed, it's got the Peeker. Perhaps not the most common map that we see Strog being played on. That would probably be Awoken and Corrupted Keep, but still a solid pick nevertheless. Now, Ruins of Sarnath, large map, a lot of open spaces. Fast champions can really shine there, and that's exactly what both of these players had in mind going into this. We're getting Slash versus Anarchy, two of the fastest, most mobile champions in the game. Now, of course, always a big of a risk on Ruins, because picking up those small armors that are so important for the light champions can be very risky, because they're so out in the open, and one bad rail can cripple you. And then lastly, on Veil of Nav, we are getting the BJ, played by psygib, versus the Eisen by cha1n. And Eisen, I feel like, is really only ever played on Veil anymore these days, and it's the first time that we're seeing him in action today.
Yeah, I do agree. We very, very rarely see Eisen played. Normally when we do, it's normally like on the third map, and they're not really too sure in terms of how to go about with champion picks, which is, of course, understandable. BJ picks, nice to see him come up again on Veil. And if it was before this matchup and you didn't mention that tweet, cha1n throughout there, I would have said it would have slightly, you know, very slightly favoured cha1n. Now that you said that, I probably would be quite convinced to say cha1n should take this 2-1, consider what we've seen there. Now that Corrupted Keep is gone as well, and I mentioned it before, I'm surprised not many people banned it previously, but people have their own priorities in terms of what they would like to ban instead, which is completely understandable. And what I do like as well with cha1n actually banning that scale, just for an element of caution, really, in case it does get used on Veil, because we've seen it from time again. But a lot of these players now have been able to deal with the scale quite well on Veil anyway, but it's kind of like extra insurance, really, isn't it? But your thoughts, Flea, what's your prediction? What do you think?
I would favor cha1n on this. I think we're about to jump in the game anyways, because both players have readied up, but I would generally favor cha1n moving forward. Also, just looking back at the match history between these two, because Lethal, they have played a staggering 10 matches in the history of the Quake Pro League, and psygib has only won the very first one over 3 years ago. So just looking at that history, at the statistics, I'm gonna have to favor cha1n, especially after that confident tweet of his. I'm gonna go ahead and say 2-1 in favor of cha1n.
Yeah, it's quite rough, isn't it? I would have slightly favoured cha1n anyway, but now the percentile's gone up a little bit more since compared to what you mentioned with the tweet as well. So make sure you follow the man as well. Don't forget that. But yeah, I still think it's going to be a 2-1. I don't know how it's going to go. It could be a 3-0 if cha1n performs how we think it's going to perform. Because it's quite a lot to take in to like really get that good again in the space of 1 week. But I could be completely wrong. He might just come out swinging anyway, which I do hope to see, because we know how good cha1n is, and we know how capable he is, how much potential he has against a lot of these series. There's a reason why he gets a top placement out of nowhere in the QuakeCon finals or the Quake World Championship finals every single time. But let's start this series off, 5th series of the day, and it's going to be between cha1n and psygib on Deep Embrace with the Ranger versus the Strog pick. We're going to start off from cha1n's perspective to see what shenanigans he's going to be up to.
cha1n immediately being aggressive, leaving up his major item, the Mega, just to scope out psygib a bit, bring the fight to him. Oh, I like that. I like that. The idea was there. The shotgun hits, unfortunately not quite damaging enough, but he gets the refrag at the very least. And I think that is one of the reasons why Ranger is actually a pretty solid counter pick to Strog. If Strog uses the Peeker, he is immobile, he's left in place, and you can just close the gap with the orb.
Oh, sadly, cha1n doesn't get that frag. Just the timing of the weapon animation, it was just taking way too long to switch across, which is Bit unfortunate. psygib does have 2 rockets left in his back pocket. Managed to replenish that. Still up 2-1. cha1n still very weak. psygib heavily stacked here in this next bout. A couple of rails would be good, even if he does get cleaned up, just to give a bit of leeway when he comes up on spawn. But you can see there, psygib finding his time now, waiting to see how and when he's going to go for that rail, as he a little bit too close to the spawn proximity there to spawn near those rockets. Speaking of rockets, some good shots there coming up from psygib. Good rail to boot, looking for the second, and he manages to bag it and his full frag.
Such a confident play by psygib as well. cha1n was down to literally 1 point of health. psygib absolutely knew that he was extremely low, but still went for the rail finisher. There, though, a little bit sloppy on the execution by psygib, and cha1n able to get the frag with nothing but that starting shotgun. Now Heavy is about to spawn, just a few seconds. It's psygib who's got the better positioning, but those rockets from below, they're actually hurting a lot. Rocket jump, a moment too late, and cha1n, oh, tragic! Didn't have the orb to save himself, unable to recover. And falls to the shallow depths.
Oh no, not a second time round, and the spawn rail may even get a second here, but yeah, he's in a good enough spot now to pick up this mega. Yeah, I think he had about 10 seconds remaining till the orb was gonna be able to use once again, so yeah, that was very unfortunate at the time. Heavy's up though, as psygib just double checking, just making sure that he's not lurking around to stop him from rocket jumping up, as maybe to catch him with the LG. The info requires to bounce on up and to try and take it down with his LG. psygib's still ahead in terms of stack, and is just taking away all the items which cha1n requires in order to recover from that last engagement. But he's got the light from above anyway, as psygib's still directly underneath, as cha1n's in a better position, but hasn't got the stack, and cha1n has to back away. Rocket jumping back up again, grabs it, uses the orb, but it's not going to be beneficial to him in the slightest, and now he needs to again play that recovery process, and he just pixel peeks there from the corner, that rail area, and this is good from cha1n. Just keeping psygib guessing, but also psygib's doing a great job, just being very patient, and patience paid off with that direct. Misses the first rail, could cost him, but another direct, and we know how good psygib's been with his rockets as of late.
I mean, psygib always has been known as a brawler. Rockets, shoddy, two of his most powerful tools in his kit. And now cha1n finally getting himself another frag, 4 minutes in. This is still doable. He's scoping out the rail. Good thing he heard that audio cue, because cha1n had absolutely no idea where psygib was on the map. Good rocket to the face, into the orb. Yeah. Messy in the end. Good rocket, but ultimately not good enough. And then in the confusion, psygib still walked away with the frag.
Second half, 2 seconds for the segregation of his items. psygib off to a very good start. No orb cha1n at the moment, but we do have the peek for psygib. Sliding away, going to go around the corner. The orb to him in the nick of time, and then else to take him down with barely any return damage. And look at the stack cha1n has at the moment. This is his time to shine now and to really put it to good use. Oh my god! And that was literally one of the worst situations to be in now, because the mega, that was going to be free for cha1n after that engagement. Oh, this is going to be tough.
Error is feasting today, Lethal. 3 ring outs on this map already. Man's eating good.
Yeah, definitely not wrong there, as the heavy has been picked up. 5.5 minutes have passed. LG comes out from cha1n. He's got to deal with his peeker just a little bit. So there's a nice amount of damage there. All comes out for that mega as well. Mega's actually still up. He didn't pick it up. It means that psygib's going to pick that up and get the first initial rail on spawn.
Now Heavy is about to spawn. cha1n's in position, or was in position at least. The Tri-Bolt, deadly. Often a very underestimated weapon. Oh, I like what cha1n did there. Good positioning, stopping psygib dead in his tracks, killing the momentum with the LG. But psygib, quick on his feet, switching to rail. That saved his life right there.
psygib with the first rail. Hungry for more. He's going to bounce on up. Man, a rocket jumping psygib's been doing. You'd think he's the one with the passive in Ranger we've seen so far. Circling back around, he's going to catch cha1n here, but cha1n does get a good setup with the LG. Reacts in perfect sync. Still though, doesn't beat the fact we've only got 3 minutes and 10 left on the clock as cha1n has to do something now. I've wasted too much time here, and the orb comes up. This could be a perfect moment here, but again, stacks a bit too equal, and psygib was in position to hold that angle and to continue to do damage, as Heavy's going to be up any second now, and looks like it will be psygib's for the taking.
Mega about to spawn. 5 seconds left to go. psygib in control of the high ground. It's exactly where you want to be, Astrog. Mega will be going towards cha1n. Neither player connecting those shots. That benefits psygib. He wants the status quo to remain in place. If he can just keep the score the same, he should walk away with the win. And that's a lot of good damage he did right there. Even though cha1n got the frag, he lost a lot of his stack to make that happen. And that has given psygib a good opportunity right now to just push in with that starting stack off the spawn. And still rival cha1n here. cha1n, can he find the shot? Can he get the kill? Out comes the peeker. Switches to LG. Walks away with it. 4 frags, 2 minutes. Not impossible. Tricky, yes, but could be done.
You can see psygib's playing time just a little bit, just the odd 3 or 5 seconds wasting here and there, but also returning a lot of damage back, which is good for him if he needs to trade anything out in a bad situation. Coming in with the orb, the rockets as well. They're looking good and got a huge amount of HP left, but the problem is the Heavy's up for another 10 seconds. So trying to do a fair bit of damage was picking up this Heavy will be huge for him, and it's only a 3 frag deficit now. 1:15 left on the clock, more than doable. He's going to eat that light and pick up the Heavy straight afterwards, and this could be cha1n's moment to shine into the chance to tie this up and go to sudden death. But with a minute left remaining and the mobility from the Strog, it's going to be difficult. We may only have 1, potentially 2 orbs left, depending on how many hourglasses he picks up along the way. But you see psygib already just playing it smart, playing it cool and collective, and just being a real pain. Good rockets coming up from cha1n as he drops on down, using the orb straight afterwards, staying alive, but it's just too much damage, and the trade comes out, and that was exactly what psygib was looking for.
Yeah, not clean enough, ends up being a trade even. And I think it's already clear how psygib is going to approach this. He's just going to go plus back, defensive, run out the clock. He knows he doesn't have to do much anymore. And that was already clear over a minute ago, when that previous mega, or 2 megas ago, now spawned. psygib just didn't even try to contest it, didn't even try to get extra damage. He just left and maneuvered himself onto Heavy already. So that clearly illustrates how he wanted to play those final moments. A 4th one, absolutely wonderful. As psygib secures map 1. This is interesting. psygib on the cusp of potentially taking down cha1n for the first time since 2020, at least within the context of the Quake Pro League.
It's a fair amount, 66% rail accuracy from psygib. I mean, it kind of felt like that as well. 16 items for cha1n and 17 for psygib. So the item count was not really too far off either. Did have just about 900 roughly more damage in comparison to cha1n as well. So not the best of starts to cha1n. Maybe he meant next week instead of this week. It's going to be no more losses, but we still got 2 more maps to go, of course, and we know that it's in psygib's nature in every series to at least grab 1 in the bag before each series ends. But cha1n, though, looking pretty good in some areas, but psygib was just so strong with his rockets. It was just unreal, and just played the Strug down to a T. So I have to see what's going to happen next in this next matchup, because it's going to be a little bit different here, Flea. It will be on Ruins, and it will be the Anarchy versus the Slash matchup. But these are the stats and results coming in from the first map. As I already mentioned, nearly 67% with that rail, and the damage across the board is just great.
That's exactly what I was going to comment on as well, because we're focusing a lot on psygib's railgun accuracy, right? You've mentioned it twice, 66% rail, but look at cha1n's, just 26. cha1n doing barely 400 points of damage with the railgun alone. That was a big decider for that first map, and rail could be even more impactful on a map as large as Ruins, especially with 2 light champions at play. So cha1n needs to step it up with the railgun, because if psygib can continue the same intensity, land the same amount of shots, without cha1n able to retaliate in turn, that is going to make it very tricky for the Canadian.
It certainly is, and especially if you're going to play a Slash as well, it's going to be Ruins back to a little bit of normality in terms of the champion picks here for this map in particular. We've seen a fair amount of Galenas, haven't we, going into Ruins? It's nice to see, you know, a more of a slide fast mobility championized matchup here between the likes of Slash and Anarchy. Of course, later on in Vale will be Aizen versus the BJ. Now, don't get me wrong, this would not surprise me if it goes to 1-0 and then goes to a third map beside it. That would not surprise me in the slightest. But of course, the accuracy is a bit of a worry, I think, for all of us here to see how cha1n is going to do. I'll be interested to see how chat thinks as well. Just trying to get as much rich, varied channel points as possible. Of course, it's best currency you can get, of course, going into Quake. But yeah, it is rough. It was a rough start, but I feel like you can definitely change things up. It's an entirely different ball game in terms of the champion picks and the map itself.
Let's see how this turns out. Expecting a lot of fast movement, no doubt, with these 2 champions, but sometimes we see that the faster the champions, the slower the games tend to be, right? Especially at the start, because of how risky one wrong move can end up being. You just have so little stack, no armor to spawn with, so if you end up in a bad position, you're done for. And so, as paradoxical as it sounds, often fastest champions can result in some of the slowest games. So let's see how both players are going to approach the second map in the series.
Let's have a wonder as straight away the inject comes out, and he's also picked up this heavy. All the weapons to his back pocket now, but psygib just keeping it calm, cool, and collective, as you rightly said, just playing it smart, just to see exactly what cha1n's going to be up to. Just tickled him a tad with the LG. Anything to drop down on that LG jump pad, but not going to happen. Some rockets coming out, but a good first rail there from psygib already.
Now, of course, the heavy is going to be the big prize for these 2 players. General wisdom goes that if you don't have armor to start with, you want to prioritize the armor on the map. So heavy will be more impactful for these light champions, especially for psygib, because he's got the injection. He can create his own health. Good rocket from cha1n. That was a crucial defensive hit right there. Otherwise, psygib would have absolutely gone all in, chased him with the LG up the bounce pad.
Yeah, that would have been a second frag, absolutely no doubt. And psygib a little bit cheeky there. Just a quick drop down and a heavy jump to say hello and try and slide in a quick rail, but wasn't to be. Chat have spoken once again, Flea. You never guess what. Exactly 50% between the 2.
Really?
So
okay.
We can't decide and they can't either. So it's quite difficult. And from what we've seen from that first map, I think it made it a little bit more decisive in terms of how even this match is going to be. Gets the first direct and the second direct is psygib. His rockets. I used to think he was going CK with his rockets, but it doesn't seem to matter at this point. Very, very good. He's stacked massively, and he's got that inject. Rocket jumping up to see if he can get a little rail shot across. He will not, but we'll be able to get the mega in a second now. He's just, at the moment, just keeping himself on his toes to find out exactly where cha1n is going to be, just to keep at him in terms of the pressure. Some good rails coming up there from cha1n. A good way for him to do enough chip to back him away. But the problem is he's still going to pick up that heavy. To see how things are going to go next. Mega in 12 seconds.
Now psygib. Solid, beautiful movement using the air control. Nice, cheeky rocket from below, 50 points of damage. I do think cha1n picked up the Mega just after that rocket connected, so didn't get the full benefit out of it, but still, it's what you want to get. And now cha1n, even though he dropped the first frag, is the one who's in full control. Both Mega and Heavy are in his favor. That with 2 light champions lethal, you can see how quickly that can change, right? cha1n, 1 wrong move, 2 bad rockets, and all of a sudden psygib has equalized the stacks. He's able to secure himself another frag.
Certainly has, and he had, sadly for cha1n, he had 2 very good rails, but of course it's not going to be enough. He has been picked up by cha1n, so it once more giving him a bit of leeway. He's just circling around towards Tribolt onto rockets. I like that from cha1n as well. Had a good read, assuming that he's going to be around that T-junction area still. Making up in the next couple of seconds. Of course, cha1n is going to be in a much better position as psygib hasn't got any rockets to use. Managed to find a little bit of ammo. Oh, he should be fine now. Of course, with the inject, he won't be available, but again, it would be a shame to waste it in that kind of situation here. 4 minutes in, psygib still up 2-0, and defensively he's been pretty damn good so far.
And as I mentioned, this does end up being a rather slow-paced game. Yes, there's quite a bit of action, but very few full committals. Rarely do either one of these players really go all in and just see things through till the end. It's a lot more about a reserved, disciplined play style, looking to just get the upper hand and then push in, always keeping an escape route available to them. As both players know just how quickly the tides can turn in a matchup like this. And now psygib, he wants this fight to go on in this position because he's got Mega behind him and he has the injection. So he wants to bait cha1n into a fight. cha1n wisely leaves, but does get chased down by the American.
Sure does, and even though cha1n didn't spawn there, psygib was very, very patient earlier on. And and psygib now just already looking for that 5th frag and still has the inject. Mega's up any second now. This is looking so good, and it's not really too much on cha1n's part, but psygib just been playing very solid.
He absolutely has been. Legs heavy as well. Like, this is scary for cha1n. He cannot just take an open one-on-one fight right now. He's got to go for the sneaky angles, the rails, maybe set up a trap. Let's just look at the stack that psygib has. And he's got the injection too. cha1n is just inviting so much damage, it feels like to me. He's just setting himself up perhaps a little too close to psygib, allowing him to very often close the gap quite easily. And then we've seen how good psygib's rockets have been so far. And he's just been obliterating cha1n.
Psygib, his rockets has been so beneficial this game, both on a defensive and aggressive manner. Looking at the items so far, 14 items for psygib, 12 for cha1n, so not too far off. 9% rail for psygib, which is quite interesting in itself, but his rockets have done itself justice anyway. And the rockets coming up once again. Going to try and finish up with the LG. Will they be able to? Oh, cha1n misses that rail and psygib still manages to get him. In the end, with the 9%, it's not even the fact that he's fired just like 11 shots or something. He's fired 22. And only at 2. But do you know what? You wouldn't think so considering the scoreline we're witnessing so far, Flea.
Yeah, indeed. cha1n faring better but still not good, right? 33% rail. That's just not what you're looking for in a matchup like this. psygib doing more damage, and also the one securing more of the major item pickups. And I like how patient psygib has been with his injections. He's only used that ability 6 times so far. So sometimes you have players who, you know, they just kind of pop it as soon as they spawn, right? We saw cha1n do that earlier today against Strong Sage. He would just use the injection as soon as he spawned, or to kind of prepare himself before a fight. psygib is doing the complete opposite. He's really hanging on to it and then popping it only when there's a real need, when he's on the back foot, when he's about to die, or when he's full on engaged in a fight and wants that extra burst of health in the middle of it. That's difficult for cha1n to play against, because he knows that at any given moment, psygib could turn a fight around just by using that ability.
Like this from psygib, he's just doing such a great job looking to stay alive and just making these very awkward rotations here. He's backing away once again. Still got a minute and a half left on the clock. And that cha1n has a small window to jump in this back, but these defensive rails is helping him so much, going 2 for 2 just then. Already doubling his shots, his shots here over the last 9 minutes of this game. And cha1n now is just going to head straight into him. He finds him, but of course he's not going to have to stack to contend in this bout, and cleans him up beautifully there. Now 6-0.
And that is going to be GG. There's nothing that cha1n can do anymore. I think we're well past that point and have been for a couple of minutes now. Because yes, Slash is fast, but a good Anarchy is pretty much just as fast. So if you've got to chase them down for this amount of kills, oh, and even then, even at this stage, psygib still stands tall, holds his ground, and adds insult to injury. 7-0 already. cha1n's tweet, his prophecy of that was the last loss of the season, unfortunately for him, failed to manifest today.
It's like I said, he meant next week, but it's alright. I think that's something he probably forgot to add to the tweet.
I sure do hope so.
Yeah, it does. It's a shame. 7-0 though in favour of psygib there, and he didn't really make much use of the rail at all, apart from one of the very last engagements where he went 2 for 2 just to keep damage or the stack low on cha1n and to back away. But the rockets were just, it's all his A game there for psygib. It's literally the most beneficial amount of damage. It's more than half the damage with the rockets in comparison. Of course, we'll show the stats later on. But yeah, psygib just playing really solid, really well. I don't think it's anything to do with how cha1n's playing too much. It's not, because a lot of people say, is it because cha1n's having a bad day and psygib's like playing standard? No, I think it's because psygib's actually been playing very solid from what we've seen so far. And yeah, it's this obviously is going to be another series win here for psygib. But cha1n, no, we will be back to the drawing board. Still got one more map left to go though. It's going to be interesting in itself. But yeah, been very impressed with how psygib has been playing so far. And as you can see from the stats there, 1,456 damage in with those rockets. He never missed a beat there with them, sadly, and defensively and both offensively as well. He's just been a real terror with him as well.
I think this should be a bit of a boost in confidence for psygib, right? He hasn't had the best of seasons, only 1 win versus 7 losses, and that 1 win was against Sip a couple of weeks ago. But this should inspire him. He is playing really well right now. Like you said, there's nothing really that cha1n is, you know, doing disastrously wrong. There's nothing that you can point at and just really say, oh, look, and he's making some big mistakes. Yes, his railgun accuracy could and should be better than this, but overall his plays are still solid. And psygib cleverly working his way around that's just, you know, showing signs of what might be ahead in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it's been nothing about aim skill or anything like that. It's just very good standard map control, which we don't normally see a lot from psygib. Normally a lot of his opponents will let things spiral out of control and he struggles to kind of dictate the pace of the game, but he's the one who's been dictating it, and he's just been positioning himself really, really well, and the reads he's been making is just kind of complemented that even further. We've seen it every single time, and he's obviously really thoroughly thought about what needs to be done in terms of his gameplay and his style, because he can't just keep on playing how he's playing and then let the remainder of the season just not go his way. And this has been a great example of that. And I do feel like his positioning and his reads have been the key factor, not really the champions, the map picks or aim skill, clearly from the rail accuracy of the previous game, just this all-round standard play on Quake and how he's been progressing so far. And it's just been nothing short of spectacular again. And it's the consistency of it as well. There's times where you may see it from one person, so on one map, and then it may go the other way. But so far, back to back, he's been looking very strong, and it's been kind of the telltale sign, really, hasn't it? So he's not been the only one who's been playing quite well balanced and playing to his advantages in terms of positioning. We saw Tox do that earlier. Even though he didn't win, he was still playing extremely well, and we look forward to seeing how he does as well, obviously, as the month's lead to the Quake World Championships. But psygib should be pretty damn impressed with himself so far, and I'm sure cha1n will perfectly understand that anyway. But like I said before, he means no losses next week.
I hope so for him, because we've seen how good we've seen how good cha1n can be, right? There's been times where he was ranked number 2 NA, where he had some really impressive performance on LAN. So I'm hoping that he'll be able to really grind things out and improve some more as we're heading towards the finals. psygib, dual wield of the machine gun, very patient with picking up the Mega right there. He could have done so way earlier, but he waited until he was certain that he would get the full 100 health boost out of it before jumping on it. So psygib gets the first frag, cha1n immediately rushes him down for the refrag, and this is the first time today we're seeing cha1n come into play, so I'm excited to see what cha1n can get up with.
Good rockets, but not a huge amount of damage. But Timido is going to be here to play as well. Good rockets again coming up from cha1n, basically saying my rockets can be easily as good as yours. And I like that, but it was interesting as well. cha1n was so patient, just trying to line up that rocket perfectly. But then as soon as he went up the stairs, he was like, okay, this is, yeah, best if I switch now. But psygib's still very weak at this stage. Does still the heavy, even if he gets cleaned up. And you can see cha1n is extremely weak, so he could, not anymore though, had a small window to try and trade that out. And cha1n is just backing away again, gets the health bubble, gets the light. Now look and see where psygib is going to come from. It's going to be directly above him. Has the read. Good first rail from cha1n. He's going to bounce all the way up, and will he better finish him? Not really too sure as of yet, as the stacks are really much equal. cha1n has picked up the light, won't be available anymore, and now he can take this risk to go for the heavy.
Now Mega will be the next item to spawn. psygib nowhere in the vicinity to contest. Oh, cha1n's gonna hear him. Pushing in aggressively. Good use of the rocket right there. A little bit of LG and then the rocket to finish it off. Correctly predicted the spawn, but was unable to land that rail. And psygib, good push by him. He saw and he knew that his rocket was still laying on the floor, that he didn't have to go to the normal spawn.
Stuff there from cha1n. He's going back through again, as psygib does trade, but still very weak. Good rocket though, picks up the Mega on top of things. Now picking up those hourglasses just to get Timmy back on track a little bit quicker.
cha1n now 3 frags in the lead. Like what he's been doing so far. Now, in my opinion, Vale is one of cha1n's best maps. Still remember that incredible comeback of his against Rafa. Mega will be going to psygib though. He's got a stack advantage. Oh, cha1n! So aggressive, perhaps too aggressive even. You've got to respect the dual wields. I don't think he got as much value out of that turret as he was hoping to. psygib was probably just a little too fast to go on the offensive, and I don't think that he was really ready for it.
Rockets coming up from psygib. Wouldn't expect anything less. It's down to Timmy once more. Finds cha1n, takes that last rail. Will will manage to get the light to cover just a little bit. He realises that he's probably around that tri-bolt area. Team comes out once again. Good LG coming out there from psygib. So it gets cleaned up once more, and already he's tied the lead. Is a bit worried for psygib at the very beginning, going up already 5-1, and now already tied things up so early on. With only 4 minutes of play here, Flea picks up the Mega, and now is back on the hunt once more. So we'll find him at the bottom. There's a sprinkle of damage from above, assuming he may be going towards the LG or TP. But this is good though from psygib. He's just firing at all angles, at all possibilities here, just to make cha1n feel a little bit uncomfortable as he hits the first, hits the second, looking for the third, but sadly he would not leave, or will not give any more for psygib. But look at this though, all that unreturned damage, the stack from psygib at the moment is just brutal with what cha1n's got to contend with.
And cha1n so far has been dealing most of the damage, but psygib has been picking up significantly more items. That is what's making it so difficult for the Canadian. Immediately pressured off the spawn once again. psygib, is he gonna push in? After that burst of LG, he might just go for it. Oh, wow. Perhaps a bit too predictable by cha1n there. Just turning around and keep on running in a straight line with psygib right at the teleporter, able to shut that down. Those kinds of plays can be costly.
That's right, psygib is just not missing a beat at the moment, as we're just past the halfway stage. Dual was up in the next couple of seconds, depending on how psygib is going to time this, because Mega's also going to be up in the next 5. He's now going to push on forward, using that dual, is going to push on forward, but good rocket coming out from cha1n, good rail! And up from psygib, and then cha1n just follows suit straight afterwards. That was definitely one way for Flea to pick up the Mega, and he picks up the Heavy. This is looking so good for psygib at the moment, as he's had 7 frags back to back, and so far cha1n just struggling to answer back in general.
Yeah, cha1n doesn't really have much of an answer. He's still doing more damage than psygib. His rail seems to have recovered. He was sitting 60% rail just a moment ago. But he needs more than just that, and now psygib has extended his lead up to 3 frags already. Oh, cha1n! I don't know if that was intentional or not. Might very well have been, because it worked out nicely, but he is down to just 7 points of health. So even with the Heavy to his name, a quick burst of machine gun damage would have done him in. psygib was unable to catch up with him though, and now cha1n looking to recover. Those health bubbles definitely going to help. And he's got plenty of time left to slowly start mounting the comeback. He's even gonna do a little bit of self-damage just so he can deny his opponent that small armor.
Back and forth, but you can see cha1n taking the risk paid off, picking up that Heavy as he was slaying psygib down. There's gonna be a good chance for him to do some additional damage here, but he's gonna retreat and just get a little bit more stack. Mega is up, still trying to deny him the rocket, but and he can't deny it anymore, but did a little bit of damage doing that course directly underneath him. Good rocket, misses the rail sadly, and psygib still has a chance to pick up that Heavy, which he has done. Even though he gets cleaned up, at least he denies it from cha1n from having such a huge stack. Mega's up in 15.
cha1n down to just 35 points of health. At least he's managed to bring it back, but he's got to be careful now. This is a critical stage. I fear that if psygib gets the refrag now and re-establishes control, might just spell GG for cha1n. Luckily for him, he's managed to recover a lot of his stack. Still has to be careful. Dual wield has been burned though, and cha1n knows this. There's around half a minute, maybe a little less, that cha1n now has. He can operate without the threat of that extra stream of damage.
You can see as well, cha1n just taking the correct routes just to not put himself in too much danger. Still, psygib still got 75, about 65 more HP, so still got a fair amount of damage to kind of deal with, but now it's going to be even larger. Heavy's just been picked up. Mega's in 10. cha1n really needs this item. Doesn't need to go, of course, till death to try and grab this Mega, but we have to think about keeping his distance in case he has to retreat straight afterwards. But looks like he should be able to get it, actually. So good bag coming out from cha1n. Heavy will be up in 6. So cha1n again in position, advantageous position to go for. And even if psygib does catch up on this Heavy, he's going to take quite a bit of damage. It actually stops him from picking up this Heavy here, Flea. The Tribot is still coming out as he dives on down with the LG. Good pick up there from cha1n. Good damage coming out as well. Textbook stuff, as he does see psygib lurking around that area, but this is looking very good. cha1n can maybe stop this from going to sudden death.
Good rail from cha1n. That's an opportunity. Out comes the aggressive push. He's gonna drop down on psygib. Kills him just before he's able to secure that small armor. Oh, and look at the movement. Defrag style. Little bit of extra rocket just to clear the ledge. And now with 20 seconds left to go, this is getting a little bit desperate for psygib. He's got no stack to work with, but he's gotta find the frag. All cha1n has to do is play defensive. One rail. And the second one, that is going to be final nail in the coffin. And cha1n will at least secure the final map. But the overall victory goes to psygib, and deservedly so.
Yeah, that was a great series overall. I think it was a lot better than we intended. And I think when we're discussing and what we're talking about in terms of how cha1n feels going into this matchup, we thought, oh, okay, so cha1n's probably quite feeling quite vicious at the moment to try and get as many dubs on the board in terms of series wins. But clawed a map back at least. He can still overtake psygib maybe later on in the season, considering we've got so many weeks left to go until QuakeCon does appear before our very eyes. I must say though, psygib was looking very, very good. So I think, and this is not even including Corrupted Keep in the map pool either in this series. So this is something people need to be quite wary of and not to underestimate him in the future weeks.
Indeed, both of these players, I think, are not to be underestimated. psygib clearly showing that he's getting into a groove of sorts. We've seen some impressive plays, some good awareness, some good aim. At times, you know, a little shaky. The LG on map 1, for instance, wasn't always there, but overall, good plays by the American. While cha1n, his railgun kind of let him down over the course of map 1 and map 2. But on map 3, Fail kind of found this mojo again and was able to bring home at least one map win.
He sure did, and you can see psygib with his little grin on the right side. He's going to be happy with that one, with that 2-1 victory. So we'll get him up a little bit more from the, obviously, the bottom side of that leaderboard. If you guys just missed it or missed the series, we've got, before your very eyes once again, 30-8 in the first map, 7-0. Consider, I still find that crazy. It was 7-0, and with the hit percentage he had, it's like he did so well just with the rockets in the LG just to keep his distance. But again, it's like I mentioned before, it wasn't about aim skill or anything like that. It was basically his positioning and his denial for a lot of those items as well. Just played a really good game. But cha1n managing, of course, scraping that map number 3. So that was just a little bit unreal there. Something we're definitely not used to seeing, especially on a map like Ruins as well.
No, absolutely not. But indeed, in my opinion at least, the most interesting one of the series was the final one, Veil of Nav. I feel like they were matched the most closely. I feel we saw cha1n play to the best of his capabilities, while psygib was still just running consistently at a high level, and it was pretty close towards the end. So overall, good, interesting series. The final map was the best watch of the bunch, at least in my opinion. And once again, congratulations, psygib.
And there we have it. That's 5 matches down, and we've still got 2 more left to go. Next is going to be the LATAM powerhouses between Maxter and Nosfer. And of course, the naughty one at the end, the last one, the cha1n versus Rafa matchup that we've all been waiting for as well. I'm sure it's going to be extremely spicy in these next 2 series. So guys at home, do not go anywhere, please, as we'll be back in about 5 minutes.